My name is Peggy, and I'm 64 years old. I spent my life as a teacher in our small Maine town, where everyone knows each other. My daughter Amanda moved back in with me after her divorce 6 months ago. We were so close once, but lately something changed in her eyes when she looked at me. Yesterday she did something I never thought possible. She ripped my phone from my hands and slammed it to the floor. With cold eyes, she said, "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." If you're watching this, please share where you're from and hit subscribe as I reveal what happened after I disappeared without a trace. I need to start at the beginning for you to understand how things went so terribly wrong between my daughter and me. For 35 years, I taught third grade at Pinecrest Elementary School. The children and their energy kept me young at heart, even as my hair turned silver and lines appeared around my eyes. My husband Frank and I were married for 30 wonderful years. He was a kind man who worked as an accountant at the local credit union. Everyone in town knew and respected him. When he died of a heart attack 10 years ago, I thought my world had ended. But I had Amanda, our only child, and my teaching career to keep me going. Amanda was always a bright child, determined to succeed at whatever she set her mind to. Even as a little girl, she liked things a certain way. Her toys had to be arranged just so, and she would become upset if I moved them while cleaning. At the time, I thought it was cute, my organized little girl. Looking back, perhaps I should have recognized those early signs of her controlling nature. After college, Amanda moved to Boston and built an impressive career as a financial advisor. She married Thomas, a software engineer, and they seemed happy together. I was so proud of the life she had created for herself. I visited them in the city a few times each year, and they would come up to Maine for holidays. Our relationship was good then, calls every Sunday, sharing our weekly news. Everything changed when Amanda's marriage fell apart. Thomas left her for someone he met at work, and Amanda was devastated. She fell into a deep depression, and her performance at work suffered. When she called me in tears, saying she had taken a leave of absence and needed a place to stay, I didn't hesitate. "Come home," I told her. "Stay as long as you need." At first, having Amanda back in the house was a joy. We cooked together, watched movies, and I thought this time together might help heal her broken heart. But after a few weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior. It started with small criticisms. "Mum, you really shouldn't be eating so much salt at your age," or "That TV show isn't good for you, it's too negative." I dismissed these comments as her way of showing concern, maybe even projecting some control over her life when everything else felt chaotic. Then Amanda began rearranging my furniture without asking, claiming certain arrangements were safer for me. She changed our meal routines and the brands of foods I'd been buying for years. When I gently objected, she would sigh and say, "Mum, I'm just trying to help. You're not getting any younger." The comment stung more than she knew. I was in my 60s, yes, but I was still active and sharp. I volunteered at the library, had a garden I tended myself, and kept up with friends. But Amanda's constant remarks made me begin to question myself. I tried to ignore my growing discomfort with the situation. After all, Amanda was going through a difficult time. The divorce had wounded her deeply, and I told myself she just needed time to heal. Then came the incident with my recipe collection. For 40 years I had collected recipes, handwritten cards from my mother and grandmother, newspaper clippings, notes from church potlucks. They were irreplaceable treasures filled with memories. One day I came home from my weekly book club to find them gone. "Where are my recipe cards?" I asked, trying to keep the panic from my voice. Amanda barely looked up from her laptop. "I threw them out. They were just collecting dust and taking up space in the kitchen drawer. Besides, we can find any recipe online these days." I felt like she had thrown away pieces of my heart. Those weren't just recipes. They were connections to people I had loved and lost. But when I tried to explain this, Amanda dismissed my feelings, saying I was being overly sentimental and living in the past. That night I cried silently in my bedroom, wondering what had happened to my compassionate daughter. Still, I made excuses for her. The divorce had changed her. She would eventually find her way back to being the Amanda I knew. My weekly book club became my lifeline during this time. For 2 hours every Thursday, I could be with friends who treated me like a capable adult. We discussed literature, politics, and our lives without judgment. It was the one place I still felt fully like myself. Amanda, however, began to question even this small independence. "Do you really need to go out so much, Mum? You always seem tired afterward," she would say. Or, "Wouldn't you rather have Brenda come here instead? It's safer than driving in the evening." Slowly, I felt my world shrinking, but I wasn't ready to admit what was really happening in my own home. As days turned into weeks, Amanda's behavior grew more concerning. She started making comments about my spending habits. "Mum, do you really need another blouse? Your closet is already full." Or, "That donation to the animal shelter is excessive. You need to think about your future." I had always been careful with money. Frank and I had lived modestly, saving consistently through our working years. My teacher's pension and our savings gave me a comfortable retirement. Not extravagant, but enough to enjoy small pleasures without financial worry. At first, Amanda suggested she could help me with my finances in a casual way. "I'm a financial advisor after all," she reminded me. "Let me make sure everything is optimized for your retirement." When I hesitated, her tone changed. "Mum, I work with clients your age all the time. Most of them don't understand the complexities of retirement planning. Let me help you before you make mistakes." Wanting to keep peace and thinking perhaps she needed to feel useful, I reluctantly gave Amanda access to one checking account I used for household expenses. "Just this one," I specified. "My other accounts are already set up the way I want them." She smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll start with this one and see how it goes." A few weeks later, I noticed some bank statements were missing from my desk drawer. When I mentioned this to Amanda, she waved dismissively. "I put them in a filing system. It's more organized that way." But my uneasiness grew especially when I tried to log into my online banking and discovered my password had been changed. When I confronted Amanda about this, her response chilled me. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that," she said, sitting down beside me with that same patronizing smile. "I noticed some concerning spending patterns, so I transferred some money from your checking account to a savings account I set up for you. It's for your own protection." "My protection?" I echoed, stunned. "Amanda, that's my money. You had no right to move it without discussing it with me first." Her expression hardened. "Mum, you've been making some questionable decisions lately. Remember last month, when you couldn't find your glasses, but they were on top of your head the whole time? Or when you forgot about the dentist appointment? I reminded you about twice." "Everyone has moments of forgetfulness," I protested. "That doesn't mean I can't manage my own money." Amanda sighed heavily. "I'm just trying to protect you from yourself. You don't want to end up penniless in a state nursing home, do you?" The conversation left me shaken and confused. Was I really becoming forgetful? Was Amanda truly concerned about my well-being? Or was something else happening? For the first time, I felt afraid in my own home, not of physical harm, but of losing control of my life. Over the next several weeks, I noticed other troubling changes. Friends stopped visiting as frequently. When I finally asked my neighbor Brenda about it, she seemed surprised. "Amanda told us you weren't feeling well and needed rest," she explained. "She said visitors tired you out too much." I was speechless. Amanda had been screening my social life without my knowledge or consent. Then there was the matter of my car. I had always been a confident driver, but Amanda began borrowing my keys for small errands. "I'm going that way anyway," she would say. Or, "The weather's bad today. Let me drive." Eventually, she simply kept the keys, making excuses when I asked for them back. One day, I noticed several contacts missing from my phone. When I questioned Amanda, she shrugged. "I was organizing your contacts. Those people never call you anyway." Among the deleted numbers were my attorney and my financial advisor, the very people who could have helped me understand what was happening. Each incident left me more fearful and confused. Was I overreacting? Was Amanda really just trying to help as she claimed? Or was something more sinister happening? My suspicions grew when Amanda brought home a friend of hers, Dr. Lewis, for dinner one evening. He wasn't my regular physician, but he was a doctor at the local hospital. Throughout the meal, he asked casual questions about my daily routine, my memory, my ability to manage household tasks. At the time, I thought he was just making conversation. As they were leaving, I overheard him tell Amanda in a low voice, "Based on what I've observed, there could be early signs of dementia. Nothing definitive without proper testing, of course, but something to monitor." My blood ran cold. There had been no examination, no formal testing, just a dinner conversation. Yet Amanda referenced this professional opinion repeatedly in the following weeks, using it to justify taking over more aspects of my life. When Amanda was at work, I began researching elder abuse online. The patterns I read about matched what I was experiencing: isolation from friends and family, restricted access to finances, gaslighting to create self-doubt, and using accusations of cognitive decline to justify control. The realization was both terrifying and clarifying. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my freedom. May 15th is a date forever burned into my memory. It began like any other Tuesday, with Amanda leaving for her remote work job around 8 in the morning. "I'll be back by 5, she said, kissing my cheek. "Don't forget to take your vitamins." I nodded and smiled, the obedient mother I had become. But as soon as her car pulled away, I felt the familiar sense of relief that came with having the house to myself. These solitary hours had become precious, the only time I felt I could breathe freely in my own home. Around 11, my phone rang. It was my sister Judith calling from Florida. We hadn't spoken in weeks, another relationship that had mysteriously dwindled since Amanda moved in. "Peggy, thank God you answered," Judith said, her voice tense with worry. "I've been trying to reach you for days. Amanda said the reception has been bad." I replied, the excuse sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Peggy, listen to me carefully," Judith continued. "Amanda called me last week. She said you've been having significant memory problems and confusion. She told me you couldn't live independently anymore." My heart began to race. "What? That's not true at all." "There's more," Judith went on. "She said she's planning to sell your house because maintaining it is too much for you. She's looking into assisted living facilities and wanted my input as your sister." The room seemed to spin around me. My house, the home Frank and I had shared for decades, where we had raised Amanda, the place filled with memories I treasured, and Amanda was planning to sell it without even discussing it with me. "Peggy, are you there?" Judith's concerned voice brought me back to the moment. "Yes," I whispered. I had no idea. "I didn't think so. That's why I've been trying to reach you. Something doesn't feel right about this. Amanda said you'd agreed to everything, but you've always said you wanted to stay in your home as long as possible." We talked for nearly an hour. Judith revealed that Amanda had been calling other family members and close friends with similar stories about my declining mental state. She had been systematically creating a narrative of my incompetence to everyone who cared about me. What should I do? I asked, fear and anger competing for dominance in my mind. Document everything, Judith advised, and call elder services. This sounds like… The front door slammed. Amanda was home hours earlier than expected. I quickly told Judith I would call her back and tried to end the call, but I wasn't fast enough. Amanda stood in the doorway to the living room, her face contorted with fury. "Who are you talking to?" she demanded, striding toward me. "Just Judith," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We were catching up." "Give me the phone." Amanda's voice was dangerously quiet. "We were just finishing." Before I could complete the sentence, Amanda lunged forward and grabbed the phone from my hands with such force that I gasped. Then, with a look of cold contempt I will never forget, she threw it to the hardwood floor. The sound of shattering glass filled the room as the screen cracked into a spiderweb pattern. "You won't need this anymore," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'll decide what's best for you from now on." I stared at her, this stranger who looked like my daughter but behaved like my jailer. "Amanda, what are you doing? That's my phone." "And you've been using it to undermine me," she spat. "Judith, really, she's always been jealous of our relationship. What lies has she been filling your head with?" "She told me you're planning to sell my house," I said, finding a strength in my voice I hadn't felt in months. "Is that true?" Amanda's expression shifted, becoming calculating. "Mum, we've discussed this. The house is too much for you to manage. You get confused about which burner you've left on. You forget to lock the doors at night." "That's not true," I protested. "I've never done those things." "See, you don't even remember," Amanda said, her tone softening to something almost pitying. "This is why I've been talking to Attorney Wilson about guardianship proceedings. It's for your own protection." The word guardianship hit me like a physical blow. I knew what that meant. I would legally become a ward with Amanda, controlling every aspect of my life, from my finances to my medical care to where I lived. "You can't do that," I whispered. "It's already in motion," Amanda replied calmly. "Dr. Lewis has provided his professional assessment, and I have documentation of your decline. The hearing is next week." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give Amanda the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I'm making pasta for dinner," she said, as if we'd just been discussing the weather. "Why don't you rest until it's ready? You seem upset." That night was the longest of my life. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through options. If Amanda was telling the truth about the guardianship hearing, I had very little time to act. Once she had legal control, I would have virtually no recourse. Around midnight, when I was certain Amanda was asleep, I crept to the attic. Years ago, Frank had insisted we keep emergency cash hidden in the house. "You never know when banks might freeze or systems might go down," he'd said. I had maintained the habit after his death, tucking away a few $100s every month in an old toolbox behind some Christmas decorations. The money was still there, $4,000 in cash that Amanda knew nothing about. It wasn't much, but it would be enough to give me a chance. Back in my bedroom, I packed a small suitcase with essentials: clothes, toiletries, medication, and my most treasured photographs, including my favorite picture of Frank. I wrote a brief note. "I need some time to myself. Don't worry about me." As dawn broke, I took one last look at the home I had loved for so many years. Then I slipped out the back door into the cool morning air, feeling like a fugitive from my own life. The early morning air held a chill as I walked away from my house, suitcase in hand. I had chosen 5 a.m. deliberately, early enough that most neighbors would still be asleep, but light enough that a woman walking alone wouldn't draw undue attention. I had spent hours planning my route, The nearest bus station was 3 miles away, a long walk for someone my age, but I had no choice. I couldn't risk calling a taxi or rideshare that might leave a digital trail. Cash only. That was my new mantra. Every few minutes, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Amanda's car racing toward me. But the streets remained quiet, the town still slumbering. By the time I reached the bus station, my arms ached from carrying the suitcase, and I was breathing heavily. The station was just opening a sleepy-eyed clerk, unlocking the door as I approached. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound casual. "I need a ticket to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, please." Portsmouth wasn't my final destination, but it was a reasonable first stop, large enough to blend in close enough to reach quickly. More importantly, it was where my oldest friend, Martha, lived. We had grown up together in this very town before she moved away after college. The clerk didn't bat an eye at my early morning travel plans. I paid in cash, took my ticket, and found a seat in the waiting area. The bus wouldn't leave for another hour, an anxious hour where every person who entered the station made my heart race. Finally, the bus arrived. I settled into a window seat near the middle, placing my suitcase on the seat beside me. As we pulled away from the station, I watched my town recede into the distance, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me: fear, grief, but also a surprising sense of liberation. The journey to Portsmouth took just under 2 hours. I spent the time rehearsing what I would say to Martha. We spoke regularly on the phone, but I hadn't told her everything about Amanda's behavior. Would she think I was overreacting? Would she believe me? I needn't have worried. When I appeared on Martha's doorstep around 9 a.m., her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with concern. "Peggy, what's wrong?" She pulled me inside without waiting for an answer. The story poured out of me in a rush. Amanda moving in the escalating control, the financial manipulation, and finally the smashed phone and guardianship threat. Martha listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she simply said, "You'll stay here as long as you need to. You're safe now." Those words, "you're safe now," broke something inside me. After months of walking on eggshells, of doubting my own sanity, of feeling trapped in my own home, I could finally let my guard down. I collapsed into Martha's arms and sobbed like a child. Martha was not only supportive, but practical. She helped me settle into her guest room and immediately began making plans for my extended stay. "First things first," she said. "We need to get you a new phone, a prepaid one that can't be traced back to you." By noon, Amanda would have discovered my absence. By evening, my prediction proved correct. Amanda began calling Martha's landline repeatedly. Martha answered calmly each time. "No, I haven't heard from Peggy in weeks. Yes, I'll certainly call you if I do. I understand you're worried." After the third call, Martha turned to me with grim determination. "She's escalating. We need to be prepared for what comes next." What came next was a full-scale missing persons campaign. From the safety of Martha's home, I watched in disbelief as Amanda transformed into the picture of a distraught daughter. She filed a police report, claiming I had wandered off due to cognitive decline. She appeared on the local news, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded for information about her vulnerable mother. "If anyone has seen her, please call immediately," she begged the camera. "She needs medication and might be confused about where she is." The performance was so convincing that if I hadn't lived through her cruelty myself, even I might have believed her concern was genuine. "She's good," Martha muttered as we watched the news segment together. "I'll give her that." Amanda created social media posts that were shared hundreds of times across New England. In each one, she painted a picture of me as increasingly senile and helpless, a narrative that contradicted the independent woman everyone in town had known for decades. The police investigation found no signs of foul play or abduction. My note was discovered, but Amanda spun even this to fit her narrative, claiming it proved my confused state. After a week of hiding, I made a decision. I couldn't let Amanda control the story any longer. With Martha's help, I arranged to meet with Detective Garcia from the Portsmouth Police Department at a coffee shop several towns away. The detective was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I showed her my ID to confirm my identity, then explained the situation in detail. "So you're not missing," she stated, "you're hiding." "Yes," I admitted. "From my daughter." I showed her bank statements I had managed to save documenting unauthorized transfers Amanda had made. I shared text messages from friends confirming Amanda had isolated me by claiming I was ill. I explained the guardianship proceedings she had initiated based on false claims about my mental state. Detective Garcia listened intently, taking notes. "What you're describing is elder abuse, Ms. Carter. Financial exploitation and isolation are criminal offenses." Her validation nearly brought me to tears. After months of gaslighting, having someone believe me, especially someone in authority, felt like being able to breathe again after being underwater. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "We can connect you with victim services, help you file for a restraining order, even press charges if that's what you want." "I need time to think about all that," I replied honestly. "But right now I need to stay legally missing while I gather more evidence. Can you help me do that?" Detective Garcia nodded. "I can note in our system that you've been located and are safe, but wish to keep your location private due to concerns about abuse. That will stop the missing persons investigation without revealing your whereabouts to your daughter." Over the next week, Martha and I worked with an elder law attorney she knew. We gathered bank records showing the full extent of Amanda's financial exploitation. We collected statements from neighbors and friends about her isolating tactics. We even obtained a formal cognitive assessment from a geriatric specialist who confirmed I showed no signs of dementia or impairment. Slowly, I was building a case, not just to protect myself, but to reclaim my life and identity that Amanda had tried to erase. 2 weeks after my disappearance, Amanda's facade began to crack. The initial wave of community sympathy was waning, and questions were arising about her version of events. People who had known me for decades found it hard to believe I had suddenly developed severe cognitive problems without anyone noticing. Then came the turning point. My neighbor across the street, Harold Wilson, had installed a security camera after a series of car break-ins the previous year. He had been away on vacation when I left, but returned to find the neighborhood abuzz with news of my disappearance. Curious, he reviewed his camera footage from that time period. What he found shocked him enough to contact the police footage showing Amanda making multiple trips from my house to her car, with boxes of what appeared to be my belongings, starting the very day after I disappeared. Detective Garcia called Martha's house to inform me of this development. "Mrs. Carter, your neighbor's footage shows your daughter removing numerous items from your home over several days. This doesn't align with her public concern about your whereabouts. She's clearing out my house," I realized aloud. But why the rush? The answer came the next day, when Martha's friend in real estate called. "I just saw a new listing that looks like Peggy's house. Is that possible? I thought she was missing." Martha pulled up the listing online, and sure enough, there was my home of 30 years, with a "for sale" sign prominently displayed in the front yard. The listing agent was Tyler Roberts from Coastal Properties, a real estate agent I had never met or authorized to sell my home. Further investigation by my attorney revealed something even more disturbing. A power of attorney document supposedly signed by me 2 months earlier, giving Amanda full authority over my property and finances. The signature looked like mine, but I had never signed such a document. "This is forgery," my attorney said bluntly. clear and prosecutable forgery. With this new evidence, it was time to end my self-imposed exile. I was no longer running from Amanda. I was preparing to confront her, but on my terms and with legal protection in place. My attorney arranged a meeting at the police station in my hometown. Amanda was asked to come in to discuss new developments in my disappearance. She had no idea I would be there. I arrived early with Martha and my attorney, Mr. Daniels. Detective Garcia had transferred my case information to the local police, who were now fully briefed on the situation. When Amanda walked into the conference room, her eyes widened in shock at the sight of me sitting calmly at the table. For a moment, she froze, clearly calculating her next move. "Mom," she finally gasped, rushing toward me with arms outstretched. "Oh my God, you're okay." I raised my hand to stop her approach. "Please sit down, Amanda." The confusion on her face might have been comical under different circumstances. She looked around the room, taking in the presence of my attorney and the police officer standing by the door. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice small. My attorney took the lead. "Ms. Carter, we've asked you here today because we have evidence of serious legal violations regarding your mother's finances and property." He laid out the evidence methodically: the unauthorized bank transfers, the forged power of attorney, the premature listing of my house for sale, the false claims about my mental capacity. Throughout the presentation, I watched Amanda's expressions shift from confusion to indignation to panic. She attempted several times to interrupt, but the officer politely asked her to wait until my attorney had finished. When finally given the chance to respond, Amanda's strategy became clear. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted. "Mom has been having memory problems. She agreed to let me help with her finances, but then forgot about our arrangement. The house listing was just exploratory. I would never make such a big decision without her final approval." "And the power of attorney with the forged signature?" my attorney asked pointedly. Amanda's face flushed. "That's not forged. Mum signed it. Maybe she doesn't remember." I leaned forward, then looking directly into my daughter's eyes. "Amanda, we've obtained a formal cognitive assessment. I have no memory impairment or cognitive decline. The doctor's report is conclusive." Something shifted in Amanda's demeanor then, a crack in the composed facade she had maintained. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising. "I was trying to protect you. You're getting older, living alone in that big house. Anything could happen. Like my daughter stealing my money and trying to sell my home out from under me," I replied quietly. The police officer stepped forward. "Ms. Carter, given the evidence presented, we could proceed with criminal charges for financial exploitation of an elder, forgery and fraud. However, your mother has indicated she would prefer to resolve this without pressing charges at this time, provided certain conditions are met." Amanda's face paled. "Criminal charges, Mum, you can't be serious." "I don't want to see you in jail, Amanda," I said truthfully. "But I will no longer allow you to control my life or take advantage of me." What followed was a difficult but necessary conversation. The truth finally emerged. Amanda had accumulated massive gambling debts over the past 2 years, a secret addiction that had contributed to her divorce and professional problems. She had targeted my assets out of desperate need rather than genuine concern for my welfare. This revelation was its own kind of heartbreak. My daughter had been suffering, but instead of asking for help, she had chosen to exploit me. The betrayal cut deep, but it also explained the drastic personality change I had witnessed. By the end of the meeting, we had established clear terms. Amanda would move out of my house immediately. She would return all financial control to me and provide a full accounting of any money she had taken. She would cancel the real estate listing and relinquish any claim to make decisions on my behalf. In exchange, I would not press criminal charges provided she entered treatment for gambling addiction. As a final measure of protection, I requested a temporary restraining order. It was the hardest decision I had ever made as a mother. But my attorney and Martha both insisted it was necessary, given Amanda's increasingly erratic behavior. When Amanda left the police station that day, the look she gave me was a complex mixture of anger, shame, and something that might have been relief that the deception was finally over. I felt a similar complexity, grief for what we had lost, but determination to rebuild my life on more solid ground. The day I returned to my home was surreal. Martha drove me there after confirming Amanda had moved her things out as required. A police officer accompanied us as a precaution. Walking through my front door felt like entering a stranger's house. In just 3 weeks of my absence, Amanda had made significant changes. Family photos had been removed from walls, furniture rearranged, and many of my personal belongings were simply gone. She was really planning to sell it, Martha murmured, taking in the staged appearance of what had once been my cozy, lived-in home. The officer helped us change the locks, while I walked from room to room, cataloguing what was missing. My jewelry box had been emptied of anything valuable. My collection of antique books was gone. Even Frank's watches, which I had kept in a special case, had vanished. "We can document all of this for the restitution claim," Martha reminded me gently when she saw tears in my eyes. "This is evidence, Peggy." Over the next few days, I focused on practical matters, closing the bank accounts Amanda had accessed and opening new ones at a different bank. Meeting with my attorney to revoke any financial powers Amanda might still claim. Installing a security system with cameras. These tangible actions helped distract me from the emotional devastation. Friends and neighbors began stopping by once word spread that I had returned. Many were shocked to learn the truth about my disappearance and Amanda's behavior. Some admitted they had noticed concerning signs, but hadn't known how to address them. "She was so convincing about your memory problems," my neighbor Brenda confessed. "She even had examples ready whenever anyone questioned her. I feel terrible for not seeing through it." I didn't blame them. Amanda had executed a masterful campaign of manipulation, leveraging people's natural concern for a potentially vulnerable elder. The hardest part of rebuilding was finding support for the emotional aftermath. Martha suggested I join a support group for survivors of elder abuse, and though I initially resisted the label victim, I found profound comfort in meeting others who had experienced similar betrayals, often by family members. In group sessions, I grappled with the guilt that haunted me. Had I failed as a mother? Was there something I could have done differently that would have prevented Amanda from becoming the person who could exploit her own mother? My therapist, Dr. Rivera, helped me understand that Amanda's actions reflected her own choices and struggles, not my parenting. "Addiction changes people's behavior in profound ways," she explained. The gambling addiction drove her to actions she might never have considered otherwise. This didn't excuse what Amanda had done, but it helped me contextualize it. The daughter who had smashed my phone and threatened guardianship wasn't entirely the same person I had raised. 3 months after my return home, I received an unexpected visit from Thomas Amanda's ex-husband. He had seen the local news coverage of my reappearance and wanted to check on me. Over coffee in my newly reclaimed kitchen, Thomas shared his own experiences with Amanda's financial manipulation. "She cleaned out our joint savings account twice before I finally left," he admitted. "Each time there was a convincing story, and each time I wanted to believe her. When gambling addiction takes hold, the person you love disappears behind the need for the next bet." His validation was healing in a way I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just my story. Amanda had a pattern of behavior that predated her targeting me. As summer turned to fall, I focused on creating new positive memories in my home. I painted the living room a bright, cheerful yellow. I planted bulbs in the garden that would bloom the following spring. I invited friends over for dinner parties and game nights, filling the rooms with laughter again. Martha, who had been my lifeline through the darkest days, made a surprising announcement in October. "I'm moving back to town," she said one afternoon. "I've found a little house just 3 blocks from you." "Because of me?" I asked, concerned I was still being treated as someone who needed protection. Martha shook her head. "Not just because of you, though having my best friend nearby is a bonus. I've been thinking about moving back for years. What happened with you was just the push I needed to stop procrastinating." Having Martha close by brought joy back into my daily life. We established a routine of morning walks and Sunday brunches. She introduced me to her book club, expanding my social circle further. As I rebuilt my life, I also discovered a new purpose. The Elder Services Coordinator, who had helped me navigate the legal aftermath of Amanda's exploitation, asked if I would consider speaking at senior centers about recognizing the warning signs of financial abuse. My first presentation was terrifying, standing before a room of strangers, sharing the most painful chapter of my life. But the response was overwhelming. Several attendees approached me afterward with tears in their eyes, some recognizing their own situations in my story, others realizing they had narrowly escaped similar exploitation. I had found a way to transform my pain into prevention for others, and this gave meaning to an experience that had initially felt like only loss. As for Amanda, the court had ordered her to complete a gambling addiction treatment program and financial counseling as conditions for avoiding criminal charges. My attorney received monthly updates on her progress. I maintained the restraining order not out of malice, but as a boundary I needed for my own healing. Some wounds were still too fresh for direct contact. In December, 5 months after I had fled my own home in the early morning darkness, I received a letter from Amanda's treatment center. She had written me a letter as part of her recovery process. I placed it on my kitchen table and stared at it for 3 days before finding the courage to open it. 6 months after the confrontation at the police station, I sat in my newly renovated sunroom, watching cardinals visit the bird feeder I had installed. The room was bright, with morning light, filled with comfortable furniture and thriving plants, a space that reflected the new life I was building. The path to emotional healing had been neither straight nor easy. There were still mornings when I woke up disoriented, momentarily expecting to hear Amanda moving around downstairs. There were nights when the memory of her cold eyes as she smashed my phone returned in dreams, waking me with a racing heart. But those moments grew less frequent as I reclaimed not just my home, but my sense of self. Amanda's letter, when I finally read it, had been the first step in a different kind of healing. Unlike her previous manipulation, it contained no excuses or deflections, just a raw acknowledgement of the harm she had caused. "I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way," she had written. "I convinced myself I was helping you when I was really only helping myself. The gambling addiction distorted my thinking. But that explanation isn't an excuse. What I did was unforgivable. And yet I'm asking for forgiveness anyway, even though I know I don't deserve it." After discussing it with my therapist and Martha, I sent a careful reply. I acknowledged her apology and expressed hope for her recovery, but I also established clear boundaries. Any future relationship between us would need to be rebuilt slowly with complete honesty and respect for my autonomy. To my surprise, Amanda respected these terms. She completed the rehabilitation program and continued with outpatient therapy. Her monthly progress reports showed consistent attendance and engagement. When she asked if we could meet in person after completing 6 months of treatment, I agreed, but with conditions. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes, with my therapist present as a neutral third party. I barely recognized the woman who walked through the door. Gone was the polished, confident financial advisor who had moved into my house. In her place was someone more subdued, with a humility I hadn't seen in her since childhood. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said simply. Our conversation was awkward at first, both of us carefully navigating this new territory. Amanda didn't ask to move back in or for financial help, which were the requests I had feared. Instead, she shared details of her recovery journey and the work she was doing with her therapist to understand the roots of her addiction and controlling behavior. "I don't expect you to trust me again," she said toward the end of our meeting. "I just want you to know that I'm doing everything I can to become someone worthy of a second chance someday." I didn't make any promises that day, but I did agree to occasional phone calls as a starting point. Our relationship would never return to what it had been, but perhaps we could build something new, something with healthier boundaries and mutual respect. In the months that followed, I made another significant decision. After 30 years in the same house, I chose to sell it, not because Amanda had pressured me, but because I wanted a fresh start. The memories of those dark months had seeped into the walls, and I was ready for a change. With Martha's help, I found a lovely two-bedroom cottage in a vibrant senior community just outside town. It offered independence, along with amenities like a community centre and organised activities. Most importantly, it was my choice made with clear eyes and full information. The move proved transformative. In the senior community, I discovered a talent for watercolour painting and began teaching beginner classes twice a week. My students ranged from 70-year-old beginners to 90-year-old artists looking to try new techniques. The joy of helping others discover their creativity reminded me of my teaching days, bringing that fulfillment back into my life. It was in one of these classes that I met Harold Jenkins, a retired English professor with a quick wit and kind eyes. Our friendship developed gradually over shared lunches and long walks around the community grounds. When he finally asked me to dinner at a restaurant in town, I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. At 64, I never expected to find romance again, but Harold's companionship added an unexpected brightness to my days. He understood grief, having lost his wife to cancer years earlier, and we bonded over our shared experiences of both loss and resilience. With my attorney's guidance, I established ironclad protections for my financial future. I created a revocable trust with clear directives for my care should I ever become incapacitated. I appointed Martha as my healthcare proxy rather than Amanda, a decision that was painful but necessary. I documented my cognitive status annually with formal assessments, creating a record that would make any false claims of incapacity difficult to sustain. These precautions weren't just about protecting myself from Amanda. They were about ensuring that my autonomy and dignity would be respected throughout my aging journey, regardless of what the future held. My work as an advocate for elder rights expanded beyond occasional speaking engagements. I began volunteering with a local nonprofit that provided guidance to seniors on avoiding financial exploitation. The director, impressed by my personal insight and communication skills, eventually offered me a part-time position coordinating their outreach program. At an age when many expect seniors to withdraw from active engagement, I found myself more deeply connected to my community than ever before. The painful experience with Amanda had awakened in me a passion for protecting others from similar harm. Amanda and I continued our cautious reconciliation. We met monthly for lunch, always in public places. She found a job at an insurance company, deliberately choosing not to return to financial advising, and joined Gamblers Anonymous, where she eventually became a sponsor for others beginning recovery. I learned to hold two truths simultaneously: that my daughter had hurt me deeply, and that addiction had played a significant role in her behavior. This understanding didn't erase the pain or fully restore trust, but it allowed me to move forward without being consumed by bitterness. The most profound lesson from my journey came to me gradually. Age doesn't diminish our right to self-determination. Society often equates aging with diminished capacity, making it easier to justify taking control from elders for their own good. Resisting this narrative requires vigilance and courage, especially when the pressure comes from those closest to us. I often tell the seniors in my workshops, your age doesn't diminish your right to dignity and autonomy. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even when others try to convince you otherwise. And remember that asking for help is not the same as surrendering control. Looking back at the frightened woman who slipped out of her house at dawn, with a single suitcase, I barely recognize myself. That moment of desperate flight became the first step toward reclaiming not just my home and finances, but my very identity as a capable, independent person with the right to make my own choices, good or bad. If you've ever felt your power being slowly eroded by someone who claims to love you, know that you're not alone. Watch for the red flags amidst isolation from friends, restricted access to finances, decisions made without your input, and the subtle undermining of your confidence. These patterns can appear in any relationship at any age. Have you ever experienced or witnessed someone trying to take control of another person's life under the guise of helping them? Has my story made you think about the older adults in your own life differently? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of resilience, and remember to like this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps these important conversations reach others who might be silently facing similar situations. Thank you for listening to my journey from vulnerability to empowerment. May it help light the way for someone else.